Hi everyone, and welcome to another weekly energy update, a general tarot guidance taking a look at how this week's energies are likely to influence our lives both individually and collectively. Continuing the theme of the past couple of weeks and even months, again, the cards kind of suggest that how these energies are going to be influential from a collective perspective are going to be very, very different to what we might experience as individuals depending on our own specific circumstances and arrangements within our lives. And this is one of those weeks where even the collective expression of the energy is going to be so very different, almost specific to the region, the culture, the country, the place in the world where you live. So perhaps this is one of those weeks where we can't even generalize. Of course, there are a couple of main topics that are kind of gonna be the same everywhere, but the rest of it is gonna be really, really specific to your region, if this makes sense. So first of all, let's take a look at what all of this can mean collectively, where the first symbol is the Four of Wands, clarified by the Four of Wands reversed and the Magician reversed. Now, this is one of those symbols which actually tells us that it's going to be very, very specific to where you live in the world and to which community, country, culture you belong to. Yet there is a specific karmic theme, if this makes sense. This is where the Four of Wands reflects that everyone, basically, every culture, every country, every community is really fighting for a sense of stability, but this is where it's different for different people. In some parts of the world, it's more the financial and the economic aspect of things which poses the greater challenge. For other parts of the world, it is the very recent natural calamities which have created difficulties. And by this, I don't just mean the very, very recent ones, but perhaps also the ones which took place 2 months ago, 3 months ago, like the floodings and so much that has happened. And basically, the recovery is pretty much still ongoing, and perhaps there is a lack of progress there. Yet in other parts of the world, as suggested by the Magician reversed, maybe the education system, the communication, or maybe the legal parts of it, the bureaucracy and all of that, are which pose the main threat, the main blockage. So basically everyone is working hard, trying their best to resolve their own issues. And unfortunately, it's not really the progress that is highlighted, but rather this is gonna be one of those weeks where the blockages, the difficulties are gonna be nuanced. And this is where the karmic forces are trying to raise awareness more than anything. And perhaps that is the biggest reason why it's so specific to your region, because every region has to become aware of what their problem is specifically. And of course, this also suggests that there are gonna be discussions, talks, plans, and also palpable efforts to bring change, to bring resolution, to basically create some kind of forward movement. But the challenges are gonna be pretty tough as well, and the fact that we just entered Mercury retrograde is not a great help either. And with the Magician reversed, maybe in many parts of the world there is blockages with transport, movement, maybe bureaucracy gets in the way as well. Maybe the bureaucratic procedures are way too complicated, certain elements just don't add up. So this is where authorities have to come up with something much easier. It's like trial and error right now. So perhaps that is why not a lot of progress is going to be made. And in other parts of the world, and this is also pretty self-explanatory, the Four of Wands ultimately represents the household as well. So housing issues might be a big problem, and where the volcanic eruptions and the lava flows and all of that kind of impacted the lives of a lot of people. Well, you can imagine how housing could be a major difficulty right now. Now moving on, we have the Three of Swords reversed, clarified by the Fool and Six of Coins. Well, collectively speaking, this isn't the most pleasant energy, because the Three of Swords reversed is symbolic to a state of being, an emotional state rather, where something that once was a fear, something that once was a source of emotional disruption, worry, restlessness, anxiety. So basically, the big picture is the fears that people had. Well, those fears, because they weren't really dealt with, and not people personally, but rather authorities and people who should have managed all of this in a better way, as in to build up trust with the people, to build up trust with the citizens, or politicians, with those people who they represent. Well, that was not successful whatsoever. So right now, the fear, that which was once a fear, has turned into anger, and it has a totally different kind of expression, where people have not surpassed their fears in a healthy and positive sense by overcoming them, but the fear stagnated, it kind of festered deep inside, and now it's the energy of anger, the energy of wanting to face their fears by not caring anymore, by not wanting to be cautious, by going after their own justice. So this represents protest, this represents rebellion, revolution, especially with things regarding the equality of help being offered to the population. The Six of Coins is the card of charity and helping those who are in need out. And from a collective sense, well, authorities have to help their citizens out, so to speak, and they might not have managed their financial resources, and neither a very equitable system where people are receiving help out. So you can imagine that in many parts of the world, this adds greatly to the anger, this adds greatly to the dissatisfaction, to the disappointment. So the Fool is the tarot's version of Uranus. So that represents people taking to the street, that represents people fighting, demanding equity, equality, humanitarianism to be taken seriously, their voices to be heard and respected. So I do believe that with this I kind of said everything that there needs to be said to the symbolism of this Three of Swords reversed. Now next we have the Ten of Coins clarified by the High Priest and the Six of Swords reversed. Now in itself this is quite a favorable combination, because the Ten of Pentacles can be seen as global economy, but at the same time also local economy, and there are a lot of efforts to stabilize it, to improve it, to make it better. Perhaps there is a lot of support, a lot of money pumped into the employment, recruitment, workforce side of things. Businesses might be encouraged. Even certain financial institutions who are not having the best of time are gonna receive some kind of help or some kind of boost to not collapse, basically, to not fail. And at the same time, this can also represent this ongoing fuel crisis, where the most important aspect is actually clarity, because perhaps it isn't and wasn't as bad as people thought it would be, or perhaps the information, the general overview of how bad or how difficult the situation is was greatly exaggerated. So there is clarity coming in, where perhaps it wasn't exactly the fuel or the price itself which represented a problem, but maybe it's transportation or management or stuff like that. But unfortunately, this also says that even though the help that is being offered or the solutions or the improvement of the situation, well, it can do the job, but for some reason people are gonna go against it. So there is not gonna be support from the beneficiaries of these, let's say, gestures of help or a modus operandi which can offer a solution to stabilize all of this. So basically, exactly the beneficiaries of this are gonna reject it. And this is symbolized by the Six of Swords reversed. Either these won't be accepted, or people will just tell them to go back to the drawing board, or it can also be where this help is conditioned, this help has strings attached, and people will just refuse it. They say, I won't accept, I won't agree to the conditions, so it will be like a failure from certain points of view. And now next we have the resolution, the Queen of Swords clarified by the Seven of Swords and the Justice. Well, this is also highly reflective of the Mercury retrograde period that just started. This means a lot of legal issues, a lot of decisions, choices that are legally binding, of course created by authorities, are going to be challenged at court. A lot of new laws, regulations, reglamentations are also going to be challenged at courts of justice. So this is where there is going to be a lot of blockage and a lot of super solicitation of the legal system exactly because of this. People are fighting for their justice, including, legally more than ever. So this creates a great blockage. This creates a lot of divergence, and not just for the present, but mostly for the future, because you can imagine that all these court rulings must be executed, must have a follow-up. And that is the second phase of all of this, perhaps a phase which we will see playing out from December onwards. And another possible expression of this, and this is perfectly true both collectively speaking and individually as well. Well, the Seven of Swords, you can imagine that one of the more negative expressions of Mercury retrograde, especially when it's aggressed by Pluto, well, that is fraudulent activities. Thieves, scammers, deceivers, especially online. So collectively speaking, this can also represent computer viruses, cyber attacks, massive disruption of the internet, perhaps not just because of illegal activities, but maybe this solar flare, solar storm has a part to play in it as well. So we can expect a lot of disruption with, software, websites, and quite serious things as well. Maybe banking systems and, those activities that we do online and are very, very important. But of course, personally and individually as well, be very careful what links you click, be very careful of scammers, phishing stuff, the contracts that you sign, any legal agreements, read everything, or before going and making a choice or signing something, be sure to consult either a professional or someone in your circle of friends who has serious knowledge or any kind of experience. So don't ignore this side of things, at least next week and in the close future. Now let's see from an individual perspective what all of this can mean. Well, this Four of Wands, clarified by the Four of Wands reversed and the Magician reversed, this can mean a couple of different things. For some people, it has to do more with a mortgage or the rent they are paying, with their living arrangements. They might need to make urgent changes there, either because they come up with this initiative, or for some people they're more like forced to. Maybe some people will receive a notice that in the not close future, but neither that far away, they might have to consider moving, relocating, and not because they want it, but because maybe something changes, the property is being sold, or some will simply need a new place, a better place. Maybe they had enough of something very inconvenient that is tied to their current homes. Or other people might lose flatmates, people who share the bills and everything, who they live with basically. So, a lot of changes can come from this part. But of course, for other people, this can represent something much more emotional, especially if they're in a partnership, if they have a family and they share the home with the family. There might be discussions that you need to change certain things. For some people, yes, it's around the house, or it's around how things are shared around the house, and not necessarily money, maybe tasks, chores, perhaps time, who spends more time here and there. It can also represent certain power struggles within a relationship, especially if you decided to go apart, who moves where, how do you split up certain things. This can also represent miscommunication, misunderstanding, misinterpretations within a partnership or family. Maybe there might be a certain moment of chaos or disruption, or where no family member agrees with one another. But this isn't like something like a heated argument or a fight. This isn't something very anger fueled or to trigger very strong immediate feelings, but this does change plans, this does change equilibrium, harmony, how things are usually done within a family, partnership, household, etc. And last but not least, some people who have like plans already to go to a celebration, a wedding, or an important event, well, those plans might suffer quick and immediate changes, and you might have to readapt. Now this Three of Swords reversed, clarified by the Fool and the Six of Coins, is actually quite a positive expression from an individual perspective, because, it means the healing, regeneration, or the turn around of a heartache, of a disappointment, of something that may have broken your heart or broken a trust. Or it doesn't really have to be a relationship, a connection, a friendship, or another person. This can be, anything, like maybe your work, goal of yours, something that you pursued which disappointed you or broke your heart, which is changing for the better. And chances are this comes as a surprise, the Fool. It can be an appreciation, for example, or if someone might have disappointed you or hurt you in the past, not only will you hear from that person again, but something they do either clarifies everything, where the heartache wasn't real, wasn't intentional, and this can be like an apology or a gesture that which seemed negative or to cause this disappointment is turned around to be something actually positive, surprising, joyous. For many people, this acts like a massive sigh of relief. For example, that you can trust someone again, that they haven't failed you, or if they promised something and they couldn't keep it because of something that is not their fault, now they will put in the effort to keep their promise, and that in itself will be really healing, really soothing, so to speak. You won't even care if they succeed or not. The fact that they're trying will really be enough for you. But this can play out in other ways as well. This can be like a romantic declaration that you are definitely not even dreaming about, coming at a moment where it comes as a shock and surprise. Maybe because that is when you feel a little bit lonely, or are thinking about the past and how similar situations wounded you, and exactly when you don't expect this, someone comes up with a gesture, a declaration, an offer which just totally sweeps you up your feet. For other people, this can be like a present, this can be like an invitation to go out somewhere. And for others still, quite simply said, their own efforts, whatever they have done, like inner work, self-psychoanalysis, self-empowerment, etc., to heal their low self-worth or to deal with heartbreak issues, not being able to trust people, or maybe social anxiety. Well, whatever work or anything that you have done in this sense will all of a sudden, as a surprise, in a rather unexpected way, reflect in your outer reality, whatever shape or form this may come across as. What it will do is simply show you how effective and how successful that inner work which you have done truly is. Now finally, this Ten of Pentacles with the High Priest and the Six of Swords reversed is also really good news, especially financially. This, of course, can play out in so very many ways in the lives of different people. For some people, this can mean a surprise inheritance, or quite a lot of money, or something very valuable being offered to them, but not with the usual procedures of an inheritance. No one has to pass on. Maybe this comes as something very, very early, or as a family member honoring them, or a family member saying, especially a family member who actually has something to offer, saying that, well, let's not wait until I pass on or whatever. I have this now and I can offer you this help now. So please take it and do whatever you need to do with it. For other people, this can actually represent a surprise inheritance, one which they might not have even dreamed of. Maybe because it's not really from a family member, from someone, of course, that they know but not expected from. And this doesn't have doom and gloom and tragedy written on it as well. Now for other people, this is like something related with their career, perhaps business, perhaps what they do, having maybe one single moment, but it is like a massive spike, like a really prosperous, favorable business, or maybe an investment that they may have done 10 months ago is now surprisingly paying off. And for others still, especially those who are looking to make an investment, they might find something very favorable. Maybe an opportunity will come their way, which is something that they just cannot decline because they wished for this. Especially people who want to invest in like a real estate thing, maybe not necessarily a house as in to serve as a home, but maybe like a land, a field, or someone who is looking to find like a place for their activities. And for others still, whatever this is comes from the past, something that you might have initiated back then, or something that you did but you deemed at that time not very successful, or it didn't lead anywhere, surprisingly returns into your life, well, as a blessing, as something prosperous. This is also a really good sign for everyone who had like physical problems, illness, a condition, went to a doctor, went recently to an operation or surgery or something. This is where the healing is visible, the recovery shows a lot of signs. For other people, it was simply like a detox or quitting bad habits, a life change, which more reflected in their everyday routines or everyday rituals. Well, it pays off now. The sacrifice or the blood, sweat, and tears that you might have invested into this Maybe it was like introducing physical exercise in your life, or quitting certain substances, changing a menu, diet, etc. Well, whatever you have done is gonna show results now. And for others still, especially those who are looking for a job or are looking for something lucrative, maybe like more clients, customers, this can be exactly that, a success. Something that you set on and was not very favorable until this present moment can have a moment, a peak, something where a connection is made or success, triumph is accomplished finally. Now with this Queen of Swords and the Seven of Swords and the Justice, from an individual personal perspective, well, this is kind of very suggestive of this Mercury retrograde period. Really thinking, really contemplating about future plans, about what is fair for you, what is not fair, how do you need to change and rearrange your relationship, your connections in your life to basically live more authentically. This is our efforts, our sacrifices, and all the strength that we invest into everything in our lives for that to be fair, to be balanced, to be basically righteous, both for us and our situations, and also any other person who we might be dealing with in any quality. So basically this is like thinking really hard, brainstorming, analyzing everything, and even basically hair splitting. But this is where the hair splitting is not done with the Virgo energies. So that means that not with that very strong meticulosity where it just needs to make perfect sense, but rather from a place of balance, and that means also compromises. That also means accepting all those things which are not perfect, which can never be perfect, accepting flaws as well, and at the same time the opposite of this, where maybe certain things are very practical and they offer a solution, but if they go against anything that has to do with our own personal sense of morality and justice, we might eliminate those from our lives, even if they're practical and helpful in other ways. But this is just the beginning. This is just us going back to the drawing board, because chances are communication may still need to take place in our lives, and we may still need to find information, reliable, down-to-earth information, clarity perhaps, a know-how to how to do exactly this, how to embody this future. So this is just like us preparing to brainstorm, to contemplate, and to truly reflect on how we can embody a greater sense of justice and balance within everything in our lives. And also what this means is that the Seven of Swords, our relationships, our social connections, as in basically other people at this time, may actually trigger our wounds and our woundedness. Something that someone says, of course with not bad intent, but still maybe a truth in their words might strike a nerve, and it might really make us think and contemplate. Or other people who we communicate with, who we deal with, might actually act as mirrors. We see ourselves, we see our own way of thinking, our own thought processes, our own judgment in whatever they say or do. So it is like a very powerful contemplative period. And also, be careful of scammers, be careful of deception, be careful what you sign. Again, this energy empowers quite strongly those people who are basically thieves, who live by deceiving others. So basically, whenever you are contacted with something that you might feel suspicious, or you get messages, email, whatever that might be, just judge it correctly. This is one of the weeks where presume that it's fraud. So research into it however you can, and only then, when you're perfectly convinced, you're sure that it's totally safe and okay, only then click the link or whatever. And finally, we have divine guidance brought to us by the lightning card, which is the Tower, and the Nine of Earth, which is the Nine of Pentacles. And the Tower, well, that has more than just one meaning. First of all, it definitely represents that this is a period, both individually and collectively, when a lot of chaos, when a lot of sudden unexpected events can just shock us, and they can in one instant, in one moment, cancel all our plans, forcing us to go back to the drawing board, of course. But we must not fear the power of the unexpected, neither the power of chaos, because ultimately it is the power of truth. It is an energy of truth, basically. Because even if it plays out in a not so favorable way, let's say like a small accident or something taking a wrong turn, well, ultimately it does reflect a certain kind of truth. Because if we think about why it happened, what brought this situation here, whatever that is, even if it's as simple as like a physical accident, well, it's still a truth that we weren't too careful about something, or whatever produced the accident is potentially dangerous, so it just raises awareness. And if it's any other situation, like something emotional, a truth being revealed, seeing someone for who they are, or any other way that this tower can basically fall down, it still invites us to expand our awareness. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, because where this is guiding us is the Nine of Earth, Nine of Coins, which is the card of independence. The tower basically must fall, must crumble, so that it can be rebuilt, it can be fortified. It has to show the weaknesses and the weak points in order for us to know exactly where to concentrate more, where to be diligent more in the future. So this lesson is making us be able to not just create, but also hold down and protect and defend our future stabilities, our groundedness. It will show us what we can rely upon and who, and of course the opposite of this. Yet another expression of this divine guidance. This tower moment can take place in the world, on the world stage, on the outside, but a lot of people who have truly played their cards right, and who invested all of their energies in their own life stories, making sure that their psychological condition, that their emotional world, that their inner stability is as strong as it can get, well, of course, they will not be affected as strongly by the tower moment, because they have unlocked their power to regenerate, their coping skills, their adaptability, and that is one of the aces, so to speak, to be able to hold down and preserve stability by embodying independence, where this independence involves for us to be able to go with the flow regardless of what happens, not to have very, very strong attachments, not to fear losing, not to fear tower moments, but rather trusting our strength that we can overcome it, we can compensate, we can basically receive when the tides are generous, and also be able to cope and manage when the tides are not so generous. And finally, the last expression of this divine guidance, well, this is where the universe might be telling us in a very clear manner that we can expect more natural calamities. That the earth, our tower, our stability, is right now going through powerful changes. So we can expect many more natural phenomena to cause disruption of all sorts. Well, thank you so much for listening. This concludes today's reading. I hope that you enjoyed it and you found it useful. And I would like to say a massive thank you for everyone who donated, to everyone who supported my work in any way, shape, or form. Thank you so, so much. And if you'd like to keep on supporting my work, you can donate on the PayPal link in the description below. With this being said, I wish everyone a blessed and prosperous week. I know that Mercury retrograde is just starting and it can cause a lot of disruptions, but this is going to lead to something much better than you could imagine. So just go with the flow. We will see the positive side of all of this in the first half of October. So thank you again. Wish everyone a magical day. Until next time, bye for now.